it or another. How come you don't get these voices, counseling moderation, or et cetera, et cetera? People just don't get it. You can't counsel anything because your head can get lopped off. That's why. If you want to put your head on the line, you can counsel something. Otherwise, you're open to the extremists' retribution, and there's no separation of church and state because no one's going to prosecute the extremists. So no moderate person is going to lift his voice or her voice. That's just the way it is. And you know, the people up in San Francisco just don't understand that. This is a really serious problem we're facing in terms of this kind of thing. And you know, when you say the U.S. is being criticized all over the world, yeah, sure, because the moderate voices can't say a word without getting themselves, it's called intimidation. So if you really rock, they had a little bit of a free election, thank God, but you saw what that took to achieve. So yes, the Pope was extremely brave to come out like, I don't know why he did it. I think he just was fed up with the whole thing and decided to say something, but he put it in a very, very clever way. So I'm saying, how to get to that subject? One man's reason is another person's poison. And there's a perfect example. So I was saying that all reasonable people now, again, here now, someone in Rome or in a church atmosphere could say that's not true. Could say, I was saying all reasonable people feel that Paul's writings came before the Gospels. And which makes Paul doubly primary to the Gospels. Chronologically, and if there's any dependency in the Gospels on Paul's writings, which is something I want to discuss in this class and have been trying to lay the groundwork to point out to you when we go through the Gospels, which is why, theoretically, a class like this should read Paul's letters completely. And that's another primary source that you should read if you want background, because how can you decide if there's any influence of Paul's letters on the Gospels if you have never read Paul's letters? Am I making sense to you? How can you make that determination? You can say, oh, I don't believe that. You know, okay, sure, you can say you don't believe it, but can you rationally, abstractly, you know, say and make a judgment on that? No, you have to read Paul's letters extremely carefully, and the other letters for that matter too, James. I don't think Peter's or John's or, you know, Jude's letters are going to help you in this determination. It's really the main letters of Paul. So if you want to make it easy for yourself and you want to do this real quick, you really only have to read Romans, 1 and 2 Corinthians, and Galatians. That's all. Philippians possibly, Thessalonians possibly, but you're not going to get any extra information out of those. Ephesians, that you don't already have in Romans. So if you want to get yourself up to snuff on knowing what Paul says, and I've been quoting, as you see, mainly from Romans, 1 and 2 Corinthians, and Galatians. These are the bedrock of Paul's approach. And even 2 Corinthians hasn't got that much in it that would add to the picture. So and even Romans more or less repeats in a more polite form what you get in 1 Corinthians and Galatians. So how do you know that? Well, if you read it like 100 times as I have, and I'm not saying that gives me any special privilege, but it's 100 times more than many of you guys. So that doesn't mean I know it better, because I may be prejudiced and warped. So someone, your preacher, could read it 100 times too. And someone else could read it 100 times. A Muslim who reads the Quran could read it 100 times. Which doesn't mean that the Muslim who reads the Quran is getting any objectivity. Normally what the person ends up doing is memorizing it all. So that's often what happens. So just because someone's read it 100 times, don't let them pull rank on you. I don't mean to pull rank, but still I have familiarity with it, perhaps beyond many of you, not all of you. So if you read it 5 times, you read Paul 5 times, and he deserves to be read at least 5 times, because he's a very clever writer, and extremely sophisticated in many ways. He's also very obvious sometimes. As I showed you, some of his attitudes are very obvious. but he's very sophisticated and very deft in the way he makes his rhetorical constructions. So to really understand the kind of construction he's making, it takes more than a first reading to get at it. So I would say, if you want to really get at Paul for this purposes, read those three things, and you're well on your way. You don't have to read any of the other stuff. So what about Titus, Timothy? There's nothing in those letters that is anything new beyond what you're going to get in Paul. You say, well, aren't those Pauline letters? No, scholars don't think those are. Oh my God. Here, I'm going to turn off my phone. So I'll turn off. There it is. And I'm going to turn off the whole thing. Here we go. I never get calls in classes. There. Sorry, now I'm the offender, but it's gone now. That's one of the first times.
But it was a good reminder.
Yeah, turn them off, right, yeah. I hope that these things can't affect your, I say if you have them up next to your ear, you're supposed to scramble your brain after a while. I hope if you have them in your pocket, they don't do other things to your privy parts and things like that. I haven't heard about that. If you have them in your pocket, do they affect your, not that it matters to me anymore, but I should think the rest of you should be careful on that score. Maybe you shouldn't carry them around in your pocket or something. Okay, getting back to this, the pastorals, as they're called. Some of the other letters are not considered to be written by Paul himself, but by a Pauline writer. And then there are letters like Ephesians, which are up in, people don't know. Philippians, I think Paul did write. And it's quite an interesting letter, but as I said, it doesn't really add anything new. Hebrews, people definitely know, is not written by Paul, but someone in the Pauline school of thought. So that's really way in another world. But very interesting letter, but it's not going to help with the story of Jesus question, to any extent that I can see. Anyone else have a letter in mind that they want judgment on? So there are letters that scholars put in the middle questionable category, which would be all the pastorals that are more or less thought to be Pauline, but not written by Paul himself. Thessalonians, I think they think is written by Paul. Whether both are, I'm not sure, but I think they probably both are. Peter's letters, most don't think they're written by Peter. John